Hello there everybody, and welcome back to the JOANN Stitch-Along for Spring 2023. I am Marley Bird, your knitting instructor. By this point, you should have completed your homework for the panel checks, please. Knit MOSAIC RUANA, and you're ready to continue on to the front panel. The good news is you have completed a majority of your project. I know it's a lot of knitting, but by now, you've got this pattern down and you're ready to move on. The next section of the pattern is relatively easy once you understand how to get started. So this video is really going to talk you through how to separate the stitches for the right panel, how you will work those decreases for the neckline, and then what you need to do to carry on with the mosaic stitch pattern. If you don't have it already, grab the instructions for this section. I've put a link right down there in the video description box below if you need a little help with that. Make sure your homework is complete because you cannot carry on to the next section until the first section is complete. Join me back here and we're gonna dive into the instructions today, guys. So put your thinking caps on. Here we go. Clearly, this is not the full back of a Ruana. This is the continuation of the gauge swatch that I worked on in week number 1. But I'm going to use this to demonstrate how you will place stitches on a holder and then how to do your shaping of the neck. But let's dive in a little bit deeper on the written word instructions because I want you to understand how this is going to work out, okay? Chart number 2 of week 2 is really just a continuation of week 1. However, row number 1 on chart number 2 is representative of row 17 of chart number 1. All right, that's where we are. As you look at the instructions for week number 2, you can see we're supposed to work in pattern across 79 stitches and then leave the remaining stitches on a holder and turn our work. And it tells us that our row number 1 will be worked at that time. Okay, for demonstration purposes, I want to bring in chart number 1 so I can talk you through what this means of working across 79 stitches. Okay, so I don't want you to get confused by this, but because this chart just has like a whole nother section out here, you know what I mean? It has this section. I want to bring it in because let's use my big old Sharpie here. I just told you that row 1 on chart number 2 is representative of row 17. So row 17 is where we are. As we work across row 17, we will work across 79 stitches. Now, luckily, row 17 is just a knit row. So you're just going to knit across 79 stitches. But what does that break down to in the scheme of repeats? Okay, well, 79 stitches, we want to take 79 and we're going to subtract 1 to begin with because that's our selvage stitch right here. Okay, so that brings us to 78. And we also know that we will end up having a selvage stitch on the other end. Okay, once we get to where we're going to have another selvage stitch at the other edge of our front. So I'm going to subtract 1 again and I'm going to get to 77. Okay, so that is my selvage. And that is my selvage. So now I'm at 77. I know my stitch repeat right here is 18. So I am going to divide this by 18, and that gives me 72. So that means that I have 5 more stitches than I have my repeats, okay? So 72, just so we kind of know, that is, it's 4 repeats. So we're gonna have 4 full repeats working across before we get our neckline. So as we go back to our chart here, what I can deduce is that my repeats, I'm going to have 4 of them. Well, this chart only shows 1. No big deal. That's all I really need. So that means from this area to this area, I have all of those accounted for in my 72, but I have 5 more stitches. So I'm going to be working 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then I'm going to just put like a line here because that's my selvage. And then this is my selvage. So if I were to add this up, you have 18 stitches here. I have 18. I just told you that we're going to have 4 of those repeats. So it'd be 18 times 4. Oh, I'm out of frame. Sorry. So 18 times 4, and that's going to give me the 72 stitches of my 79. Then I'm going to add in 2 for my selvage. So one selvage here, one selvage here. So I'm going to add into, that's going to give me my 74. Plus my 5 stitches that I'm working into this panel right here, like this partial repeat right there, right? So that's my 5. So I'm going to add 5 there, and that's going to give me my 79 stitches that I'm working across on row 1. The reason I wanted to show it on paper here is because I need you to understand you're not going to be stopping dead on right at the end of one of the check panels. You're actually working a little bit into one of the other check panels. And then what will happen is we are going to use decreases to decrease down so we are just within a certain check panel. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so we have a selvage stitch here and a selvage stitch here. We're gonna pretend those don't exist. They're always knits. Okay, that first stitch is always knit. That last stitch is always knit. As you read the instructions, it tells you after you do your first row, which is row 17 on here, which would be row 1 on here, you're supposed to do 3 rows even. Okay, 3 rows even. Let me change my marker. So we're gonna come back on that row. And then we go back on that row, or not even, in pattern. Okay, so 3 rows even in pattern. All that means is we're not doing any decreases. So we're going to just work what the pattern is. Okay, we're going to work what the pattern is. So we're going to go back and forth and back. It's really when we're back here on row 21 if you're looking at chart number 1, or we're back here. So this is where we started. So 1, 2, 3, we're on row 5, and on row 5, that is representative of what would be first row written in the instructions. And that's going to be important because that also is our first decrease row. Okay, you might be like, why am I decreasing? Well, let's bring in our schematic. We want to get this little bit of tiny shaping right here at our neckline. So what has happened is across here, we have 79 stitches. We know of that 79, 2 of these are selvage, right? And we know in here we have 72, right? Because those are our repeats. So we'll just put, we have 4 repeats, which gives us 72 stitches. And then out here, we know we have these 5 stitches, right? Plus our selvage, essentially. We have these 5 extra stitches. We're gonna get rid of those. We're gonna get rid of those with these decreases that we're going to do. What happens is you are working those 3 rows, and on row 5 we are going to work across our pattern, and when you get down here to the end of this section, you're going to work a knit 2 together. So for purposes of demonstration, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This 6th one is your selvage. Okay, and then I'm going to go like this, and these are your repeats. And then you have one right here. Again, that one is your selvage. Okay, so that's essentially what we have up here, but I'm changing it up down here. Row 5, you're working across. You're going to decrease with the knit 2 together, those 2 stitches, leaving you with 1 stitch. Then the next row, you're going to come back this way, and you're going to decrease again. You're going to decrease this one with this one. I'm going to point that up there, and it leaves you with 1 stitch, right? So we're working all the way across, we come around, we come all the way back. So now this one is up here, and you're going to work a decrease to that. And then we're going to turn and come back. So this one comes up here. You work a decrease, you come to that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. That's what the pattern tells you to do. It says do rows 1. So this coming down, and you have your decrease, that's row 1. You're coming back, you have your purl 2 together, that's row 2. And then it says to repeat rows 1 and 2 once more. So we finish row 2, we come back, row 3 is a decrease right here. We turn, row 4 is a purl 2 together, decrease right here. We come back, then it says repeat row 1 once more. So we turn and we come back. That brings this up here, right, essentially. We do that, and it leaves us with 1 stitch outside of our repeat section. That 1 stitch is also our selvage stitch. So now we have our selvage, our repeats, and our selvage. And all of this is going to get you to 74 stitches. Does that make sense? So as long as you are working these decreases out here when it's time, that's going to give you this shape here at the neckline, and we're going to get rid of those 5 stitches. All right. Now, what's going on with all of this while we're over here doing this? This is just left on some scrap yarn. We're going to knit across 79 stitches. All of these stitches right here, we're going to put on some scrap yarn, or you could put them on another pair of needles if you have them. But they're just going to hang out there, because in week 3, we are going to essentially do this same process, but over here on this side. Okay, so hopefully the explanation of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how it's going to create that shaping will help you better understand how to venture into the project. I'm pretty sure you guys know how to do knit 2-togethers and purl 2-togethers, but just in case, let's go ahead and work a couple rows together so that way we can get the hang of this, all right? I'm gonna work on my little tiny swatch. You guys work on whatever you have in front of you. If you still have your gauge swatch, you wanna play around with that first, please feel free to go ahead and do that. All right, let me grab my stuff. Okay, so this is simulating as if I was on a row 17 of chart number 1, or I'm now on a row 1 of my chart number 2. And this is where I would knit across 79 stitches. And we already know that that essentially means I have 1 selvage, and then I'm going to have 4 of these repeats. So I'm just going to work across my repeat here for the 18 stitches. And I am going to treat this as if this is just my side panel here. So I want to show you how this would work. So let me get across these 18 stitches. I might have to go and count so that I know exactly where I am. All right, so there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Now, I know now that I have 5 stitches plus 1 selvage. So I'm going to work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 1. Okay. In theory, this here would be the rest of the back of my Ruana. Okay. So I would leave these stitches on a scrap yarn, or I'd put them on another spare needle. So I'm going to show you, if you get some scrap yarn and a tapestry needle, literally go into each one of these stitches as if to purl, just slip them off, put them on the scrap yarn. And I like scrap yarn, and here's why. I put it on the scrap yarn, and then I make a knot in my scrap yarn so that those stitches, they are not going anywhere. Okay, those stitches are just hanging out there. I'm going to forget about them until next week. Now I just carry on with this portion. Okay, you see how that works? Now don't forget, we don't start shaping immediately. We have to do 3 rows even, and we're following our row 2 chart. So right now, I am just going to knit my first stitch and then purl to my last stitch, because this would be essentially my row 18, right? It'd be my row 18, which is helpful because if you wanted the words, you could look back at your first week's instructions and be like, oh, okay, I know what row this is. I know what I'm supposed to do. So if you have any trouble, you can always do that. But there's nothing special here. We work a couple rows even, or 3 rows even, I should say. And all that really means is we're not doing any shaping. We are following the pattern. We're just not doing any shaping. Last stitch I have to knit. Okay. Now that I've reached the end of the row, I go ahead and switch my colors, just like I've been doing all along, the new color on top of the old. And this would put me on row 3 of chart number 2, or row 19 of chart number 1, if that helps you. Okay, so I know that I will knit 1, and then I slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and then I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I do believe. that brings me to the end of my repeat section. And so now I'm going to continue on, and I want to work in pattern over these next 6 stitches. And remember that the last stitch is a selvage stitch. So we will slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit that last stitch. Okay? Turn our work. This would be row 4, coming back. We knit our first stitch. We'll slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, and then purl 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. That brings me to the end of row 4, and I'm getting ready to start row 5. And row 5 is where I begin working my decreases out here. So as I'm working these stitches, I'm still working them in pattern. Okay, I'm going to work them in pattern, but I'm going to decrease the last 2 stitches. When I'm on a right side row, I will knit 2 together. When I'm on a wrong side row, I will purl 2 together. So let's work across. It's time to change my colors again. This is row 5 of the pattern. For chart number 2, this would be row 21 of chart number 1, if you're following along at all. I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now slip 1, slip, slip, and then slip. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that brings me to the end of my repeat. Those are my last 6 stitches. I'm going to work these stitches in pattern. However, these last 2, I'm going to knit 2 together. So here's how this would work. Let me get my yarn here. It's trying to not feed over here for me. Okay. All right. So conveniently, these are a simple knit section. So I am just knitting over to the last 2 stitches, and I'm just going to knit 2 together. Okay. I'll turn my work. Immediately, I'm supposed to purl 2 together. Okay, immediately I'm supposed to purl 2 together. So I am going to put my needle in there, purl 2 together, and now it says work in pattern to the end of the row. So I will purl, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to purl my 4, and now I'm to my pattern repeat section. Okay, so this is where I just jump right back into my established pattern. Okay, so that was 2, those were 2 decreases. Now I have to do another set of those 2 decreases. Okay, so let's go ahead, switch colors. I'm down here. This is a row 7, okay? So I knit 1. I've worked across to where I'm to my last 4 stitches, and these are supposed to be in pattern, right? So this would be a slip, knit, but I'm going to slip, knit, and then knit those 2 together. So I'm going to slip 1, knit 1, and then these would be knit 2 together. Then I turn my work. I'm supposed to start with the purl 2 together, remember? And then slip 1, and now I should be continuing on in my pattern like I'm supposed to, right? So I would be purl 9, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. All right, so that was my one repeat. Now I'm supposed to decrease just one more time. And remember that one last decrease, it's gonna get rid of that extra stitch over here. It's gonna leave me with a selvage. And then I am just back to working a selvage, and then my repeats in between. So let's switch our colors. Get back to my cream color here. And just so we're all clear, this would be a row 9 on the chart number 2. So I am just knitting across right here. I'm knitting 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then, oh, I slip them with yarn and back. So 1, and then I finish with one more. And this is where I would, finish up with purls. So this, I'm just going to knit these two together. And what I have here now is I have a selvage, and then I have 18 stitches between here, which is my full repeat. For you, you would have 72 stitches between your selvage and the selvage for 74 stitches total. But essentially, all we've done here is we've taken the chance to decrease these stitches down so that way we get a nice little edge here. Now I'm going to give you a little tip. If keeping in pattern here is a little bit too tricky for you and you want to keep all of these stitches in stockinette, you could do that. It's not the end of the world if you do that at all. It's literally up at the top of the neck. So if you have longer hair and stuff, it's going to be covered. And it's just not going to show that much. Like if I'm looking at this, I would have never known that I essentially kept in pattern right there. I would have just kept it in stockinette had I known. So I'm going to give you that caveat. If you want to keep those stitches in stockinette stitch outside of the chart right here, okay, you absolutely could do that. Hopefully these instructions have helped you understand what you need to do when it comes to dividing your stitches and starting that right front. Your homework for this week is to complete the entire right front. Follow along with the stitch pattern. Once you get that shaping done, it's smooth sailing. It's just knitting until you get to the end, and then you will bind off those stitches. Then we get to move on to week 3, where we get to do it on the left side. But the good part of that is you already know what you're doing as far as the construction, so it is not going to be super difficult to learn. All right, this is a lot of knitting, but it's not nearly as much as last week, so you should be able to get done with this in no time. If you have any questions, be sure to ask in the JOANN Stitch-Along group on Facebook. I'm there, as well as a lot of other people who are doing this knitted Ruana with you. We love to answer your questions, see your progress photos, and understandably, we love joining your excitement because this is an exciting adventure that you're on. All right, I'm Marley Bird. This is the JOANN Stitch-Along for Spring 2023, and I'll see you in the next video.